To be or not to be, that is the question. Prince Hamlet struggles with the reality of his suffering and is pondering whether he should forfeit his life to escape it. Bible translations present this same problem when we studiously observe all reference to Cain. Is he alive in Genesis 4 verse 23, or is he dead? Shall he be, as the Masoretic text implies, or has he been like the Septuagint claims? This is the question we attempt to answer in this episode. Before reading Jasher chapter 2, we look at the relevant scriptures from the Bible, the mystery around the character of Lamech. We introduce Lamech by reading Genesis chapter 4, verse 16 to 24 from the New King James Version.
Genesis 4 verse 16 to 24. Then Cain went out from the presence of the Lord and dwelt in the land of Nod on the east of Eden. And Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bore Enoch. And he built a city, and called the name of the city after the name of his son, Enoch. To Enoch was born Irad, and Irad begot Mehujael, and Mehujael begot Methushael, and Methushael begot Lamech. Then Lamech took for himself 2 wives. The name of one was Adah, and the name of the second was Zillah. And Adah bore Jabal. He was the father of those who dwell in tents and have livestock. His brother's name was Jubal. He was the father of all those who play the harp and flute. And as for Zillah, she also bore Tubal-Cain, an instructor of every craftsman in bronze and iron. And the sister of Tubal-Cain was Naamah. Then Lamech said to his wives, Adah and Zillah, hear my voice, wives of Lamech, listen to my speech. For I have killed a man for wounding me, even a young man for hurting me. If Cain shall be avenged 7-fold, then Lamech 77-fold.
The popular opinion of Reformed religious commentators describe Lamech as a violent man, who boasts arrogantly about his ability to subjugate his enemies with ferocity. These commentators also take advantage of the opportunity to accuse Lamech of being the originator of polygamy, using this as further proof to describe his hedonistic, lustful nature, kicking his remembrance while he's down, so to speak. These theological scholars do not suspect that they might, from a position of pious condescension, be judging a man whose character is misrepresented. Who can blame them? We can clearly interpret the spirit wherein Lamech composes himself toward his wives. Let us read this same text in the LXX Brenton Septuagint.
Genesis 4 verse 19 to 24. And Lamech took to himself 2 wives. The name of the one was Adah, and the name of the second Selah. And Adah bore Jobal. He was the father of those that dwell in tents feeding cattle. And the name of his brother was Jubal. He it was who invented the psaltery and harp. And Selah also bore Thobal. He was a smith, a manufacturer both of brass and iron. And the sister of Thobal was Naamah. And Lamech said to his wives, Adah and Selah, hear my voice, ye wives of Lamech, consider my words, because I have slain a man to my sorrow and a youth to my grief. Because vengeance has been exacted 7 times on Cain's behalf, on Lamech's it shall be 70 times 7. Brenton Septuagint.
We are forced to consider that there are 2 different spirits portrayed in these strangely dissimilar texts. It does not read as a prideful boast, but comes across as the lamentation of a man who is grieving his circumstances. First important distinction between the texts. Notice that, if Cain shall be avenged in the New King James, and that vengeance has been exacted on Cain in the LXX. The tenses tell a very different story, and it would be interesting to discover why this is so. Second important distinction is 77-fold in the New King James Version and 70 times 7 in the LXX. I will later propose a theory that might explain the reason for this discrepancy by applying the logic of intent. And without further ado, let's begin reading Jasher chapter 2.
And it was in the 130th year of the life of Adam upon the earth that he again knew Eve his wife. And she conceived and bare a son in his likeness and in his image, and she called his name Seth, saying, Because God has appointed me another seed in the place of Abel. For Cain has slain him. And Seth lived 105 years, and he begat a son. And Seth called the name of his son Enosh, saying, Because in that time the sons of men began to multiply, and to afflict their souls and hearts by transgressing and rebelling against God.
The Bible marks this as a time when men began to call on the name of the Lord. Jasher notes that there is a multiplication of people, so it is logical to conclude that social conditions were becoming progressively more complicated.
And it was in the days of Enosh that the sons of men continued to rebel and transgress against God, to increase the anger of the Lord against the sons of men. And the sons of men went, and they served other gods, and they forgot the Lord who had created them in the earth. And in those days the sons of men made images of brass and iron, wood and stone, and they bowed down and served them. And every man made his god, and they bowed down to them. And the sons of men forsook the Lord all the days of Enosh and his children. And the anger of the Lord was kindled on account of their works and abominations which they did in the earth. And the Lord caused the waters of the river Gihon to overwhelm them, and he destroyed and consumed them, and he destroyed the third part of the earth. And notwithstanding this, the sons of men did not turn from their evil ways. And their hands were yet extended to do evil in the sight of the Lord. And in those days there was neither sowing nor reaping in the earth, and there was no food for the sons of men, and the famine was very great in those days. And the seed which they sowed in those days in the ground became thorns, thistles, and briars. For from the days of Adam was this declaration concerning the earth, of the curse of God, which he cursed the earth, on account of the sin which Adam sinned before the Lord. And it was when men continued to rebel and transgress against God, and to corrupt their ways, that the earth also became corrupt. And Enosh lived 90 years, and he begat Canaan. And Canaan grew up, and he was 40 years old, and he became wise and had knowledge and skill in all wisdom. And he reigned over all the sons of men, and he led the sons of men to wisdom and knowledge. For Canaan was a very wise man and had understanding in all wisdom, and with his wisdom he ruled over spirits and demons. And Canaan knew by his wisdom that God would destroy the sons of men for having sinned upon earth, and that the Lord would in the latter days bring upon them the waters of the flood.
In Genesis chapter 6, Moses states that mankind multiplied and God's Spirit was not willing to abide with men forever, reasoning that short-sighted sinfulness was a consequence of their physical longevity. This warranted a shortening of man's lifespan. In Jasher, Canaan is portrayed as a pre-flood prophet of God's looming judgment. Humanity never fails to produce a prophet of imminent catastrophe. The prophet is disregarded and doomed to be wrong until he is proven right in the fullness of time.
And in those days Canaan wrote upon tablets of stone what was to take place in time to come, and he put them in his treasures. And Canaan reigned over the whole earth, and he turned some of the sons of men to the service of God. And when Canaan was 70 years old, he begat 3 sons and 2 daughters. And these are the names of the children of Canaan: the name of the firstborn Mahalalel, the second Enan, and the third Mered, and their sisters were Adah and Zillah. These are the 5 children of Canaan that were born to him.
Adah and Zillah are 2 characters about whom there is much mystery. Moses was sure to draw our attention to them. Let's inspect 2 alternative witnesses, speak to the questions of metal smelting that arose in the previous video where we discussed Jasher chapter 1, and make some new observations. New King James Version, Genesis 4 verse 16 to 24. First observation. Moses points out that there was indeed knowledge of metalworking before the flood, and that artisanal pedigree was developing in the arts and in the crafts in the late 4th century since Adam. The contention that implements of iron for plowing existed retains its plausibility. Second observation. There are 2 distinct genealogies recorded in early Genesis, that of Cain and that of Seth. But Moses, for the most part, only cares to define where the males originate from. According to Jasher, Lamech descended from the line of Cain, and Canaan the father of Adah and Zillah from the line of Seth. Yet Moses injects the inclusion of Adah and Zillah without connecting them to either Cain or Seth by descendancy. Another character mentioned in very inconspicuous manner is Naamah, a girl mentioned only once, with no other reference to her from either the Masoretic text or the Septuagint.
Then Lamech said to his wives, Adah and Zillah, hear my voice. Wives of Lamech, listen to my speech. For I have killed a man for wounding me, even a young man for hurting me. If Cain shall be avenged 7-fold, then Lamech 77-fold.
Third observation. Therefore whoever kills Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold, but unto Lamech 77-fold. When reading this in the Bible, it is easy to paint Lamech as egotistical and irreverent, attempting to make his claim to fame. He appears to esteem himself before his wives. The difficult part to digest is why Moses thought that this poetic self-aggrandizement should be included in the Bible. Most scholars interpreted it as a demonstration of severe moral decay and violence, specifically to fit in with the larger narrative leading up to the judgment of God, warning that the whole of creation will be covered by a flood. LXX Brenton, Septuagint, Genesis 4 verse 23-24.
And Lamech said to his wives, Adah and Selah, Hear my voice, ye wives of Lamech, consider my words, because I have slain a man to my sorrow, and a youth to my grief. Because vengeance has been exacted 7 times on Cain's behalf, on Lamech's it shall be 70 times 7.
The Septuagint frames the poem of Lamech as a sorrowful lamentation and not a boast. Cain had a seal of protection that would avenge him to a degree of 7 times severity. Lamech needs a seal of God 490 times more powerful, protecting him from his accusers compared to Cain. It is necessary then that we inquire from a third witness to adjudicate for us, and in that process we might discover a different crime hidden under the dirt of a millennia-old lie.
And Lamech, the son of Methusael, became related to Canaan by marriage, and he took his 2 daughters for his wives, and Adah conceived and bare a son to Lamech, and she called his name Jabal. And she again conceived and bare a son, and called his name Jubal. And Zillah, her sister, was barren in those days and had no offspring. For in those days the sons of men began to trespass against God, and to transgress the commandments which he had commanded to Adam, to be fruitful and multiply in the earth. And some of the sons of men caused their wives to drink a draught that would render them barren, in order that they might retain their figures and whereby their beautiful appearance might not fade. And when the sons of men caused some of their wives to drink, Zillah drank with them. And the childbearing women appeared abominable in the sight of their husbands as widows, whilst their husbands lived, for to the barren ones only they were attached. And in the end of days and years, when Zillah became old, the Lord opened her womb. And she conceived and bare a son, and she called his name Tubal-Cain, saying, After I had withered away have I obtained him from the Almighty God. And she conceived again and bare a daughter, and she called her name Naamah, for she said, After I had withered away have I obtained pleasure and delight. And Lamech was old and advanced in years, and his eyes were dim that he could not see. And Tubal-Cain, his son, was leading him, and it was one day that Lamech went into the field, and Tubal-Cain, his son, was with him, and whilst they were walking in the field, Cain the son of Adam advanced towards them, for Lamech was very old and could not see much, and Tubal-Cain his son was very young. And Tubal-Cain told his father to draw his bow, and with the arrows he smote Cain, who was yet far off, and he slew him, for he appeared to them to be an animal. And the arrows entered Cain's body, although he was distant from them, and he fell to the ground and died. And the Lord requited Cain's evil according to his wickedness, which he had done to his brother Abel, according to the word of the Lord which he had spoken. And it came to pass, when Cain had died, that Lamech and Tubal went to see the animal which they had slain, and they saw, and behold, Cain their grandfather was fallen dead upon the earth. And Lamech was very much grieved at having done this, and in clapping his hands together he struck his son and caused his death. And the wives of Lamech heard what Lamech had done, and they sought to kill him. And the wives of Lamech hated him from that day, because he slew Cain and Tubal-Cain, and the wives of Lamech separated from him, and would not hearken to him in those days.
The profundity and depth discovered in this chapter should inspire more people to earnestly study, verify, and possibly debunk these texts within Sefer HaYashar. It appears that the Septuagint is vindicated in the manner it portrays Lamech. This gives rise to 2 new questions. Firstly, how did this corruption of contemporary translations happen? Secondly, what would the motive be for this obvious corruption to be injected into our Bibles, and who stood to benefit from perjuring the character of Lamech? I present to the jury of my Christian brothers and sisters the evidence of my theory. Take note that the Masoretic text was used as primary source material when translating the Old Testament into contemporary languages as far back as the Reformation. A core principle of the Reformation was ad fontes, meaning back to the sources. Reformers sought to bypass the Latin Vulgate and translate directly from the original languages. For the Old Testament, that meant Hebrew, not Greek. The Masoretic text was the authoritative Hebrew Bible accepted by post-Christian Rabbinic Judaism. The Protestants responsible for translating the Old Testament, somewhat critically, placed their trust in a text that post-dated Christ by no less than 700 years. It was assembled by Jewish scholars who denied the deity of Jesus. It seems that they have doctored all the texts that verify the godly status and messianic nature of Christ. We are not going to address all the examples of scriptural tampering because this is a study of Jasher chapter 2 specifically, and I only consider these as far as it pertains to this chapter. We read from the New King James Version. Matthew chapter 18, verse 21 to 22.
Matthew 18, verse 21 to 22. Then Peter came to him and said, Lord, how often shall my brother sin against me, and I forgive him, up to 7 times? Jesus said to him, I do not say to you, up to 7 times, but up to 70 times 7.
70 times 7 equals 490.
Genesis 4, verse 24. If Cain shall be avenged 7-fold, then Lamech 77-fold.
77-fold equals 77.
Genesis 4, verse 24. Because vengeance has been exacted 7 times on Cain's behalf, on Lamech's, it shall be 70 times 7. Brenton Septuagint.
The Septuagint narrative corresponds with the New Testament Greek, calculated as 490. When Jesus spoke to Peter, he was making a direct reference to Lamech in Genesis chapter 4. The Masoretes had no qualms changing the text to have Jesus appear as making up an arbitrary number. We have 2 witnesses who are testifying in unison, but we have not yet considered Jasher in this poem. The speech of Lamech, which was later amended with a cryptic clue by Moses and later quoted by Jesus, serves as a signature of divine providence. In Jasher, there is no mention of 7 or any other number when considering Lamech's spoken words. All we can do is judge the spirit and attitude Lamech is using while addressing his 2 wives, and then we must discern whether it be arrogant or sincere.
And Lamech came to his wives, and he pressed them to listen to him about this matter. And he said to his wives Adah and Zillah, Hear my voice, O wives of Lamech, attend to my words. For now you have imagined and said that I slew a man with my wounds, and a child with my stripes for their having done no violence. But surely know that I am old and grey-headed, and that my eyes are heavy through age, and I did this thing unknowingly. And the wives of Lamech listened to him in this matter, and they returned to him with the advice of their father Adam, but they bore no children to him from that time, knowing that God's anger was increasing in those days against the sons of men, to destroy them with the waters of the flood for their evil doings. And Mahalalel the son of Canaan lived 65 years, and he begat Jared, and Jared lived 62 years, and he begat Enoch.
We have answered the will be, or has been, question regarding Cain. Cain will not be avenged because he has been avenged. Emphasis on the past tense. 2 witnesses strongly agree that the Septuagint is the text that composes the poem of Lamech, in the spirit of historical accuracy. To determine the motive that convinced the rabbis to perjure their own religious text, I have to draw some conclusions. Pre-Christian Judaism was not only a religion, but also a cultural identity. Since the advent of Christianity and the spreading of the gospel by the apostles, Judaism was suffering from a hypothetical suffocation. The Christian beliefs were disruptive to their institutions and challenged all the customs of the incumbent ideology. Most all of the Jews who came to a saving knowledge of the crucified Christ were systemically excommunicated, expelled and ridiculed by the Jews who deemed Christianity a threat to their social order. Those who converted to the new and very liberating ideology of salvation by faith understood that the Sanhedrin were also threatened in financial and political capacity. And those who were convinced by the evidence that Jesus is Messiah instigated many contentious debates in the synagogues. This division destroyed the cohesion that bound them in their identities as Jews, and it eventually ended in diaspora, which is the logical outcome given the circumstances. You can blame many other factors, but the underlying praxis remains consistent. Those Jews who converted to the Christian faith very easily assimilated with the Greek and Roman communities who accepted the gospel message. These Romans and Greeks were, for the most part, converted to Christianity by Jews who were schooled in and had intimate understanding of the Septuagint and Hebrew scriptures in the late 1st century AD. In light of this, post-Christian rabbinic Judaism was strongly opposed to any evidence that affirmed and proved the deity of Christ. The Masoretes have gone so far as to reinvent the ancient records with the intent to disguise all prophetic text that even remotely point to his death and resurrection. Most Christian scholars and theologians dismiss this claim by saying that these are sincere and innocent changes and not purposeful corruption. Their reasoning and praxeological intent can be debated. Let's unpack this. The most agitating chapter to Jews is Isaiah 53. This text has so many references to Christ by way of prophecy that it tortures the minds of those Jews who reject Jesus. Words fail them when they are confronted by this specific chapter. Virtually no early Christian preacher could explain the cross without Isaiah 53. It is the single most quoted and most alluded to chapter in the entire Old Testament when the apostles are pointing to evidence that Jesus is the crucified and risen Messiah. A popular text used by the apostles when preaching about the messianic nature of Christ in the synagogues. I contend that the Masoretes could not significantly alter Isaiah 53 without Christians accusing them of giving false testimony against their neighbor, who is literally God, in their obviously uninspired attempt to restore the lost Hebrew. Reformers sit with the same problem, having defended their claim to the divinely inspired nature of their translations. The translators of the Septuagint have also been praised for being divinely inspired in the 3rd century BC. This too is an unquantifiable claim with regards to any religious text, irrespective of who makes it. It has to continuously be tested and retain its veracity against new revelation. And I quote, Ecclesia reformata, semper reformanda. The Church reformed, always reforming. So the logical next question to ask is this. What on earth has this got to do in relation to Lamech and the story in the book of Jasher? Are we here to critique translators from the 8th or even the 16th century AD? No, we are not. We are trying to follow the clues and establish praxis. We discover discrepancies and find proofs that affirms the crime and the motive. We use the Socratic method and apply Platonic reasoning, and in the process we pull back the curtain of mystery. Isaiah chapter 53 verse 4-5.
Isaiah 53 verse 4-5. Surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows, yet we esteemed him stricken, smitten by God, and afflicted. But he was wounded for our transgressions, he was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement for our peace was upon him, and by his stripes we are healed.
Let us compare this verse to Lamech in Jasher.
And he said to his wives Adar and Zillah, Hear my voice, O wives of Lamech, attend to my words. For now you have imagined and said that I slew a man with my wounds, and a child with my stripes for their having done no violence. But surely know that I am old and grey-headed, and that my eyes are heavy through age, and I did this thing unknowingly.
What says the Lamech of the Septuagint?
And Lamech said to his wives, Ada and Selah, Hear my voice, ye wives of Lamech, consider my words, because I have slain a man to my sorrow and a youth to my grief.
I have slain a man to my sorrow and a youth to my grief. Surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows. I slew a man with my wounds. He was wounded for our transgressions, and a child with my stripes. And by his stripes we are healed. It would appear that Isaiah was familiar with the Sefer HaYashar just as he knew the Pentateuch of Moses. He was inspired to point to Lamech while anticipating the person of Jesus, the sickness and the cure, the poison and the antidote. If we examine the tenses used, Isaiah appears to be talking about a person from the past while prophesying about someone in the future. Theologians speculate that the forgiveness of sin was established by God as an eternal principle. This means in the beginning, in the Genesis. Following the logic of our conclusion in retrospect, we find Moses responsible for planting the cryptic clue, 70 times 7. Jesus alludes to the cryptographic clue written by Moses in his explanation to Peter. Lamech's poem hints prophetically to Isaiah 53, and Isaiah reveals the only begotten Son of God in the suffering servant, manifest in Jesus Christ. Lamech claims the need for divine protection, and Jesus asserts this great mercy to Lamech through a blood sacrifice. In light of this data, we discover the only way we can logically explain the gross discrepancy between the two Lamechs. The Masoretes were actively trying to erase compelling evidence of Christ's divinity and disconnect Moses' acknowledgement thereof from Holy Scripture, attempting to retain their grasp on the faith of their Jewish people that they should not be convinced of Christ through Moses. This in the year 700 to 900 AD. The Masoretes knew that Jesus was the Son of God. They denied him and perjured his word with full knowledge of his divinity, destroying the link between the faith of Moses and the Lord Yahweh made man, who is Emmanuel, God with us, in the burning bush and on the Roman cross. Christians should not concern themselves about what rabbis write down and how they choose to interpret those writings in the first millennium after Christ. I wonder what motivated the Protestant reformers to gravitate towards the Masoretic text. My answer, given the lack of information, is that the Masoretes somehow convinced the Jewish rabbis to accept their text as an authoritative recreation above reproach, and the Protestant reformers could not see a reason to doubt it, had no alternative, or did not know any better. Please do not think I am advocating for throwing away your King James Bible. I use all my Bibles, in as far as they are tools in my pursuit of truth. The Protestant heritage and by extension Anglican, Catholic, and Orthodox histories all serve a valuable purpose in preserving the history of mankind's struggle to seek and know the nature of God. It is important that history be in amber. It is what it is. And I believe that even the lies and failures are there as a testament to our fallen state.
2 Corinthians 13 verse 1. This will be the third time I am coming to you. By the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, every word shall be established. Hebrews 12, verse 1-2. Therefore we also, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight, and the sin which so easily ensnares us, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and has sat down at the right hand of the throne of God.
To be or not to be, that is the question. Jesus chose not to be so that all who believe in him can be forgiven. Even Cain, who lamented thus, "My crime is too great for me to be forgiven. My punishment is greater than I can bear." I really hope you enjoyed this episode. Please leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more of this content.